Welcome to the Strategy Skills podcast. I'm your host, Chris Safarova. I'm CEO of strategytraining.com, and our podcast sponsor today is strategytraining.com. If you want to strengthen your strategy skills, you can get the overall approach used in well-managed strategy studies. It's a free download, and you can get it at firmsconsulting.com/overall approach. And you can also get McKinsey and BCG winning resume, free download, and you can get it at firmsconsulting.com/resume PDF. And this is a resume that led to offers from both firms. So if you're currently moving, transitioning, looking for a better role, another role, could be a great resume to look at to see what you can improve on yours. And today we have with us Mitch Warner. Mitch is a managing partner at the Arbinger Institute, an expert on strategy, performance management, organizational turnaround, change, and conflict resolution. And he actually addressed organizations such as NASA, the US Army, and Air Force. Mitch, so great to have you with us.
Great to be here, Chris.
So we are going to talk about self-deception today, self-betrayal, such an important topic. What made you so passionate about this topic?
Oh, well, I think this topic, this issue of self-deception is just at the heart of all of our human challenges. So just being a human being and experiencing life, lived through the lens of self-deception, I see how it gets in the way of all of my relationships. And as a professional, I've had the opportunity to see how it undermines all of my success. When I'm self-deceived, I just don't perform. I don't do what I'm actually capable of doing. As an individual contributor, as a leader, it doesn't matter. It's just undermines all of my potential. So knowing that and seeing the havoc that self-deception wreaks in my own life makes me passionate wherever that shows up in my life.
So before we dive into self-deception, how would you describe the best leaders you ever came across and what made them so effective?
Well, I've had so many amazing leaders in my life. I would say the leaders who are most effective in my experience that have influenced me most are the leaders who actually saw me as a person, who were curious about my needs and challenges and objectives, and that saw a vision of not only what we were involved in together, what we could achieve together, but they had a vision of what I could become inside of that larger mission or objective. So they were passionate about what they wanted to achieve with me, but they were also passionate about helping me be everything that I could be inside of that mission. And really saw me. They were curious. They're humble because they're so curious. They're just so interested. They don't have ego. They don't have anything to protect. They're vulnerable, not because they try to be, but just because they're real. You feel like you can truly connect with that person. There's no facade. And I love those leaders. I love working with those people. They bring out the best in me.
We all value working with people who don't have a mask on and have good intentions.
Yeah.
It's not very common, unfortunately. So with that said, let's talk about self-deception. First, let's define it. How would you define it?
Self-deception is just simply stated, living a lie. It's lying to myself and simultaneously believing the lie I'm telling myself, which seems strange when you think about that, because of course there are lies that I believe that other people tell me because maybe it seems plausible what they're telling me, or, it lines up with my experience, or because I trust the person who's telling me this thing that happens to not be true. But when I'm the person telling myself a lie, it seems so strange that I could then believe that lie. But it happens all the time. We live our lives with narratives that just aren't true. They're self-serving, but they're not the truth. And we know it deeply. At a deep, deep level, we know that they're not true. That's how we can go about hiding it from ourselves so well, because we knew it was not true in the first place. And you see it show up in every facet of life, these false narratives that we end up telling ourselves that serve a very particular purpose.
Mitch, what are some of your favorite examples of self-deception to make it more easy for people to understand how it is applicable to them? Because some of our listeners now thinking, I'm not sure if I have anything like that going on for me. I'm kind of honest person with others, with myself.
Yes, and that's part of why self-deception is so tricky, is because when we tell ourselves the lie, we believe it. We don't think that, oh my word, I'm telling myself something that's not true. But so often these lies, they have their root in what we call self-betrayal. That, when I'm just with other people and I see other people as people, they count the way I count. They matter the way I matter. I have senses all the time of things that other people deserve from me as people. Let's say that you and I work together, Chris, and I come across a piece of information one day. If I just see you as a person, you matter like I matter, you count the way I count, well then, if this information would be helpful to you, then I'll just have a sense. And the sense will be to go share it with you. And if I do that, then we continue working just like we were before. And we continue to get results together and all of that. But let's just imagine for a minute that I don't share that information. Now, in that moment, I've betrayed my own sense of what you as a person deserve from me. How would I begin to see you and myself in that moment? Well, I might begin to see you as a threat. After all, only one of us could get the promotion that's coming up. I might see you as lazy because I was just doing my job when I came across this information. Nothing special. I wasn't doing anything extra. So if you didn't find this information, that means you're lazy. I might think of you as incompetent or whatever the case might be, right? And how do I begin to see myself? Well, I'm all the opposite of those things. I'm really smart. I'm hardworking. After all, I came across this information in the first place. And because of that, I probably deserve that promotion that's coming up more than you. I start to see you and me and the whole world in a way that justifies this betrayal of my own sense that I had toward you. Now I'm living a lie, right? I'm living a lie about you and about me. And I believe it. And all of my emotions in that moment, they tell me that this is true. I'm bugged. I'm frustrated. I feel put upon. I feel like I'm the victim of this situation, that I have to work with people like you, Chris, that just can't do their job well enough to find the information on their own. I see myself as incredibly noble too, because the last thing that would be helpful is to give you this information. Then you're never going to grow up and, fulfill your potential. Notice how perverse this lie is. But everything in my experience tells me it's true. And going forward, I'll start to look for evidence that that's true. I won't see all the good things that you do, but I'll latch onto and I'll pay attention really carefully to all the things you don't do. Why do I do this? It's because I have a new need in my life now that I've betrayed myself that didn't exist the moment before. I have a need to be justified for seeing you and me and the whole world in a way that justifies a refusal to see and respond to you as a person. So yeah, look, in that moment, if you said, now, why are you believing a lie, Mitch? I'd say, what are you talking about? Like, I'm the hardest working person here. Chris, she doesn't pull her weight. I don't think that's a lie. But yet, it's not the truth. And it gets in the way of me actually doing the things with you as my coworker that would be most helpful. So yeah, the real question is, how would I ever know that that's a lie? Because you're right, no one walks around thinking that they're telling themselves lies. So I have to start looking for, what are the red flags in my life that might tell me that a narrative that I've adopted isn't true? And for me, I'll just say it, Chris, for me, it's blame. The moment I'm blaming other people, I feel like the people around me are the reason why I can't do what I need to do or can't be the way I would otherwise want to be. That's a red flag for me. I'll start talking to myself. I'll replay, experiences that I've had with someone, and I'll get in the car and I'll kind of play it out in my mind, and I'll come up with a new script of something I can do. I talk to other people. I gather allies to my side. I feel resistant to other people. I sometimes avoid other people. And I feel really righteous. I feel like, man, I feel like a martyr in that situation. I'm doing the very best I can. And yet I'm surrounded by idiots. I'm surrounded by people that don't see other people as people, or whatever it is. I find that I have excuses all the time. Well, all of those, just the feeling of being justified, that feeling itself tells me something's not right. I'm trying to justify something that wasn't straightforward in the first place. So I think that's the more important question is, are there places in my life where I'm experiencing things that might tell me that something isn't true? Because when I tell myself a lie, it is very, very convincing.
One of the examples you shared that I think would be great to share right now is example of mothers dying during childbirth because doctors not washing hands and why doctors afterwards refused to wash hands. Let's talk about that. I think it will really help our listeners understand how it plays out and then start seeing where it potentially happening in their lives.
Yeah, it's an example that we pulled just from history, and we utilize this in the book, in the 4th edition of Leadership and Self-Deception. Well, every edition. It's a core story that is really a metaphor, but it happened in real life. It played itself out in the Vienna General Hospital a couple hundred years ago, where a physician named Ignaz Semmelweis, who worked in the maternity ward delivering babies, saw this incredible discrepancy between the two different sides of the maternity ward. One side of the maternity ward was served by midwives, and the other was served by surgeons. So midwives on this side were delivering the babies, and surgeons on this side were delivering babies. And there was a huge discrepancy in the deaths of the mothers from what was called then childbed fever. And Semmelweis, this physician who was working on the maternity ward, he couldn't understand this difference. Surely it couldn't just be that midwives were delivering these children and physicians or surgeons were delivering these children. There had to be something else at play. And so he thought, well, I'll standardize everything. I'll standardize, ventilation and diet and even birthing positions, everything that he could think of so that he could remove any variable that might explain this difference. And then in the middle of trying to figure this out, he went on a sabbatical for, I think, 4 months, left the hospital. And when he came back, the mortality rate within the side of the maternity ward where he as a surgeon had been working improved. So now the factor that he removed was himself. And he thought, what could account for that? And through a series of investigations, it finally dawned on him that the fundamental difference between what a surgeon did and what a midwife did was that surgeons actually worked on cadavers when they weren't delivering babies. And he started to think about there must be some particle that we are transporting from the cadavers into the maternity ward that's infecting these mothers. Germ theory hadn't been discovered yet. It was really this discovery that propelled that idea in the consciousness of the medical profession. But before that didn't exist, that you could transmit particles. And so he started to think about that, and he realized we are the carriers. The thing that I as a physician have been complaining about and trying to figure out. Think about a leader in an organization and they're going, this culture, people are dying in this culture. Engagement is dying. Accountability is dying. Collaboration is dying. What's going on? Why are people not engaged, collaborative, innovative here? And then the leader leaves and it gets better. Then the leader has to realize there must be something on my own hands. There must be something about the way I'm leading that is killing things in this organization, or in my family, or in my community, or wherever that is. And so it's a simple metaphor. The interesting thing about that story is that when this occurred to Semmelweis, he said to all the surgeons, we are carrying something from the cadavers into that maternity ward. And so in our side, 1 in 10 mothers are dying. In the side of the maternity ward where midwives were delivering the babies, 1 in 50. There were women who would give birth outside of the hospital on the street because they were so terrified of dying in the hospital. So he goes to the surgeons and he says, we've got to wash our hands. And he came up with this lye and chlorine solution that would kill, these germs. And when he suggested it, the physicians resisted. They said, we're not washing our hands, because they couldn't bear the idea that they were the carriers, even though this would have saved the lives of human beings. And you have to start asking yourself, are there places in my life? Are there relationships? Are there situations where I might be the carrier? I might be at fault. I might be complicit in the problems I complain about, but I'm so resistant to that possibility that I refuse to even wash my hands. I refuse to look at ways that I could change, even though my family, my company, my team is on the line. And yeah, we see that play out over and over. What we were talking about before, this need for justification when we go against our own sense of what other people need from us, is so all-consuming that we actually see in our work that people will end up valuing justification more than success, more than happiness, or in the case of this Vienna General Hospital, more than the lives of the people that we profess to care about.
Mitch, you mentioned earlier that one of the ways for us to identify if there's self-deception going on is looking where we blame someone. Are there other ways that you found to be effective ways to identify self-deception?
Yeah, I would say look for any place in your life where you feel resistant. If there's a person in your life that you feel like, I resist that person, or I avoid that person, or I find myself becoming confrontational, or I feel threatened by that person, all of those are signals that we're not just with each other. What is that? And to the degree that I might be resistant or avoidant or blaming or frustrated, I have to ask myself, is there a story at play here? Because I can't just be with this person the way I am with other people. I think that feeling of justification is a big one. Oftentimes I know this isn't a word, but I horribilize other people. I create this caricature of people in my head, and it's not that person, but it's this big bad person that I've come up with in my head, that as long as that version of that person is true, then everything that I'm doing is okay. And I might say, well, yeah, I don't think it's the most effective thing that I could do, not talking to this person or talking about this person to other people, but given this caricatured, horribilized version of this person, it's the best I can do. What else could I do given that that's who I have to deal with or work with? And there might be things that are specific to you. You might just ask yourself, what do I act like or sound like or feel like personally at an individual level when I don't see people around me as people? When I have a story I have to maintain. I would say any self-deception usually comes with really negative emotions that we'd rather be free of, that aren't telling us the truth about the situation, but that we tend to revel in, that we tend to keep alive, even though we say we would rather be free of them. But we're not willing to do the kinds of things to see the person in truthful ways that would help us overcome the negative emotions that plague us, that bog us down. Hope that helps.
Yes, definitely. Mitch, can you give us more examples of typical ways that leaders engage in self-deception, just to help people identify where potentially they may be going through this?
Well, it's interesting. For me as a leader, what I find is that having lived a lifetime of self-betrayal, right? I have developed certain views of myself, like that view that I had with you in the don't share the information example, right? I saw myself as smarter, more capable, more hardworking. And I have a particular image of myself like that as a leader that I carry around. And of course, you can imagine if I carry that image of myself around that gave me justification in this example with you, if I walk into a meeting like that, what would the impact of that be? That I'm the sort of person who's really smart and capable and has to have all the answers. If you asked me walking into that meeting, Chris, hey, Mitch, are you the kind of leader that needs to have all the answers? I'd say, no. Ideas can come from anywhere. I'm the kind of leader that loves great ideas. I don't need to take credit for them. It doesn't matter if they come from me or somewhere else. But imagine if I walk into a meeting and I've got this self-image that's grown up through a lifetime of self-betrayal, and then I offer an idea, how to solve a problem we are wrestling with. But then you, Chris, you say, you know what, Mitch, we've tried that here before. It didn't really work, but we were thinking maybe this. Now, I wasn't experiencing any of those negative emotions that were the red flags of this inward mindset, this self-betrayal, this self-deception before. But now that you threatened the image I have of myself, I experience all of those negative emotions. I feel resistant and frustrated and bugged and entitled and like I deserve, different treatment. I'm the leader after all. Like, why isn't anyone listening to my ideas? So it's not just self-betrayal. It's that once I betrayed myself, if I'm walking around with that image that gave me justification, I'm walking into new situations and everything's great unless you threaten this image. So you have to ask yourself, have I developed a particular image of myself? Now, the ones we've been talking about are better than images. I feel superior than other people, smarter than, more capable, more hardworking, whatever the case might be. But notice there's another self-image that's the inverse of that. that can grow up out of self-betrayal. Like with the example of sharing the information, one way to get justification is to see myself as better than you and you as worse than me. But I could flip that around. I could have gotten justification in that experience with you as my coworker, thinking, I can never measure up. I never am kind of on time to the party. So, Chris is so connected. She's so smart. She's so capable, so much more capable than I am. So she's probably already found this information. I shouldn't share this with her because then she's going to laugh at me. She's just so much better than I am, right? If I'm a leader and I've developed a way of finding justification over a lifetime by seeing myself as worse than, you can imagine how that shows up as a leader. I go into a meeting and I think, I don't want to share any ideas because I don't want to be seen as, not knowing anything or something like that. We find that all the time too. And it might be different in different situations. We coach a lot of leaders, and what they'll often say is, I have a better than version of myself and a worse than. And sometimes it's different depending on the situation I'm in. Like at home, I might have a worse than. At work, a better than, or vice versa. Just pay attention in your life this week to the places where you feel threatened, where you feel watched, where you feel judged. It's a signal that I'm no longer with people, not because I necessarily betrayed myself in this moment, but because I'm carrying around an image of myself that I've developed over a lifetime. And just see how it shows up for you. As a leader, it shows up for me as needing to have all the answers, feeling put upon, feeling entitled to have better employees, more hardworking employees, or feeling like, I don't want to be exposed. I need to be seen as someone who is really hardworking or cares about their people. Any version of that just gets in the way of being with people. And you asked me right at the beginning that really interesting question. Tell me about the best leaders you've ever had. Well, what's interesting is I said, they're the leaders who saw me. And what we're talking about right now is the very thing that keeps us as leaders from seeing our people, the thing that would make us most influential with those we lead.
Mitch, do you feel that the origin of self-deception is always self-betrayal?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think that self-betrayal is the origin, but we typically don't experience self-betrayal in a vacuum, right? We grow up inside of a culture, inside of a society, inside of a family that has certain expectations, certain views, and we adopt those views without even knowing it. But they become a part of us when we go against our own felt sense. So for example, I might grow up in a culture, in a society that has a particular view of people that look and act like me versus people that don't. Well, of course, I'm going to experience a sense about people that look and act like me different than I would about people that don't look and act like me. If I've been told over the course of my life that we are fundamentally different. So already I've got justification ready and baked in to the betrayal that is possible. For example, let's say that on the issue of race, for example, let's say that I grew up in a society that tells me my race is superior to another race. Well, I still, as a human being, may very well have a sense to treat someone of that other race as a person that matters the way I matter, that counts the way I count, that is equal to me, though we may be different in our skin color. Once I betray that sense, though, the justifications that are already available to me that may have already dampened my sense that I might have relative to that person, my senses already may be dampened as a result of the messages that I've received societally, or when I've betrayed my sense, those messages become easy justification. They become the lowest hanging fruit in terms of the justification I seek. So it's too simplistic to say, this is how it happens, without recognizing that it always happens inside of a context. And it's helpful to just recognize my context. But I'll tell you this, there is no escape from the lies I may have been told that I've inherited those socialized views of the world without becoming fully responsible as a human being for my own failure to respond to other people as people. Society itself is not going to break down those false views of myself and others I may have inherited as fast as I can if I'm just really, really honest about the fact that everyone I encounter is a human being who's as real as I am. And whether I inherited that false narrative or I built it over a lifetime of self-betrayal, the only way I find true freedom and the only way I find true influence and effectiveness in my relationships with other people is if I choose to see a person as a person.
How do you deal with self-betrayal in your own life? How do you stay disciplined and not allow yourself to find justifications why you should not do something that you feel inside you should do?
Oh, my word. Chris, that is such an important question. I think for me, this is a daily battle. Let me just tell you. Even understanding these ideas and trying to help other people implement them in their life doesn't change the fact that this is a wrestle for me every day. And for me, the thing that helps me the most is to just stay curious. When I find myself going inward, when I find the seductiveness of one of those lies about myself and others start to take hold in my heart, if I can just remember, hey, this person is a person. You know, you have an inner life and a reality that is just as real for you as mine is for me. If I can just stay there. And sometimes it means that I force myself to just stay with you, right? And I feel those lies come in and I just say, no, I'm not gonna listen to that. I'm going to listen to Chris longer. Usually, the more I learn about you, the less I can believe the lie. I can believe the lie if I'm turned away from you and I can maintain that caricature. But when you're in front of me, I can't maintain that lie. If I just say, okay, Chris, tell me more. Tell me more about what your experience has been. You know, tell me about where that's coming from for you. Tell me about why that's such a struggle for you. Just tell me more. There's something about your humanity that can cut through even the most seductive lies that I might want to tell myself.
Mitch, and when you think about self-betrayal, you specifically think about situation where you interacting with one specific person on the other side, or is it broader than that?
Oh, well, it can be whole groups of people. You know, typically in an organization, what you have is you have groups of people that are in self-deception toward each other in a conflict that we call a collusion. And we call it collusion for a very specific reason, because it's two groups of people that actually need each other to be the very problems that they complain about. And oftentimes I find myself a part of that group. Sometimes I start the group. You know, I'll make this real just with a simple story. I've got 5 children. My oldest, we just sent to college. But when she was 13, she started doing something really frustrating. She started talking back at the dinner table. Well, I had a choice in that moment. Regardless of her behavior, my choice was, do I see her as a person or do I see her as an object? Do I see her as something less than a person? And I chose to see her as something less than a person. I saw her as a brat, as spoiled, as ungrateful, as undisciplined, you know, all of those things. Well, as a result, how do you think I responded to her? Well, I raised my voice, I punished her, I sent her to her room, you know, or there were some times where I didn't raise my voice, I just got silent, you know, I was kind of gave her the silent treatment, because somebody's got to be the adult around here, you know, that kind of thing. And how do you suppose she saw me? Well, she saw me as a tyrant, you know, and of course she's defensive, seeing me as not cool, not listening, you know, not respectful of her. So is she going to do more or less of the thing I don't like? Well, she's going to do more. So we're both in this, what we call a collusion. It looks like a conflict from the outside, but when you understand self-deception, what you realize is both of us are making a choice. We've just blamed our choice on the other person. We've said, well, yeah, just like in the experience of not sharing the information, I think, well, what else could I do in this situation than raise my voice? And she's saying, well, what else could I do than talk back, given the dad I have to deal with or the daughter I have to deal with? It's like we've entered this agreement. I'll mistreat you so that you can blame your bad behavior on me, if you'll mistreat me so that I can blame my bad behavior on you. It's like we agree to do that. And of course, one of the ways that we'll both find justification when we're self-deceived in this dance with each other that we call collusion is go talk to other people. We go gather allies. She's going to talk to people. I'll go talk to people, right? This happens in organizations. We find ourselves as part of a group, and we've all adopted this narrative because we all need each other as allies because we're mistreating that team or that department. And sometimes we'll bring on a new member of our team and we'll say, basically, in effect, in order to be part of our team, you have to hate this other team. And we'll give you, by the way, we'll give you all of the justification. But that's kind of a function of being part of this team or being part of this family or whatever the case might be. Yeah, there are self-betrayals and self-deceptions that grow out of those betrayals that are just me. But pretty quickly, what I find is that I have to end up provoking other people to be as blameworthy as I've said, to be as problematic as I've said, in order to continue the justification. And in order to find more justification, I'll look for allies, and now we have whole groups of people that are in collusion. You see this between nations, you see this between ethnicities, you see this everywhere. And we'll adopt those as just by virtue of being part of that group.
You see it in marriages a lot.
Yes, you do. And it doesn't get better when the marriage ends. You know, when the marriage, quote unquote, ends, now we've got to look for additional ways to find justification, right? And so we might recruit children if there are children as part of the marriage, or in-laws or siblings or whoever that the case might be, right? Nothing ever gets better just because we've ended the day-to-day interactions in a relationship. We are always in relationship with each other, always. That defines who we are. Who I am at the end of the day is who I am with other people.
Mitch, in that situation with your daughter, when she started talking back during dinners, do you think it was self-betrayal on her side that she decided to act that way, and then she was justifying it and you were feeding the justifications she could make why she should continue acting this way?
Well, look, I'll say this. Self-betrayal never feels like a choice. It never feels like a choice. It's never, this person is a person, but I'm not going to treat them like a person. Already in the context of my experience, I feel like I don't have a choice. How else am I supposed to treat a daughter who talks back at the dinner table? How am I supposed to help her grow up and be the person she's supposed to be if this is just okay? Of course I have to talk back. I don't think I have a choice, even in my behavior, right? But of course I have a choice. And for her, she doesn't think she has a choice. How else are you supposed to deal with a dad like this? I've got to protect 4 younger siblings from this tyrant who thinks that he can just treat people this way, right? So at no point in self-betrayal do I think I have a choice, but I do. And the fact that I have to continue to provoke the other side to be as problematic as I claim that they are is proof that I know deep down that there was a choice. I know that because you're a person, you deserve to be treated like one. I'm never okay with it. I'm never okay seeing someone who's a person as anything less than a person. That's why I have to find justification. But if I ever admitted to myself that I had a choice, actually the justification now goes away. Then I go, oh, well, then that's on me. So I'll never admit that it was a choice. So yes, I would say at a fundamental level, I made a choice and Faye made a choice, but that's the last thing we'll ever admit to ourselves, right? Faye made a choice to talk back, and that's why I have to respond the way I do. And from Faye's perspective, I made a choice to yell at her, and that's why she has to respond the way she does, right? It's the other person's fault. And as long as it stays the other person's fault, well, then I'm perfectly justified. It's not that I'm justified only, it's that there's no other rational response that I could come up with, given the people that I'm with. If it was my choice, then I'm actually responsible. And I can't admit that.
So just to confirm, for yourself at least, I know you don't know what it was for your daughter, but for yourself at least, do you think your natural kind of drive was to respond differently, but then you responded how you felt you should respond in that situation so that you can parent your daughter and help her become the person she can become?
Yeah. That question is pretty convicting. When you said, was it your natural drive to actually stop, think about why might my daughter be talking back? What's behind that? I wonder what she's struggling with. I wonder what's provoking that, because that's not her. I wonder what I've been doing that actually, the truth is, Chris, that wasn't my natural state. At least was not the state that I walked into the house that day, because over a lifetime of self-betrayal, I had gotten to a place where I saw myself as a father who deserves respect, a father who deserves to have children behave the way that I think that well-behaved children behave, my children behave, right? And so talking back at the dinner table, that wasn't a behavior that I could go, I wonder where that's coming from. That was a threat. That was a threat to my image of myself as a father who doesn't have children that talk back. And now I don't see the behavior. I can't even question what might be behind that. Just feeling that this is a threat, I am now feeling all of those red flags of self-deception. I'm feeling resistant and angry and frustrated and all of those negative emotions, right? If I was free of that image, if I could have come to that dinner table free of anything to protect or project about myself, then yeah, when a daughter starts talking back, I go, I wonder what's behind that. And maybe I should wait. Maybe I should wait until we can be just by ourselves, her and I, and maybe I could ask her about that. And if I did that, and that's truly how I saw her, she might tell me. And then maybe it's about me. Maybe it's about something other than me. I don't know. But then we could do something about it. But you see how this is at the heart of everything we do as people. We can either be with people and be really effective as a parent, as a leader, as a child, as whatever our role might be, or we can give up all of our effectiveness and protect our image. But we can't do both.
I think your daughter is lucky to have you, to have a dad who thinks so deeply about things and cares so much. For someone listening to us now and they recognizing that they're in a similar situation like what you and your daughter were going through, how do they start rebuilding trust?
Oh my word, that is such an important question. If you can see that maybe you've been carrying an image of yourself into situations like I was with my daughter, wherever that is, maybe it's with a daughter, maybe it's with a partner, maybe it's with a employee or a coworker, I would just say, spend some time right now and ask yourself, what has it been like for this person to live and work with me when I have this image of myself? What's that been like? Like, what's life like for them having to live or work with me when I haven't been seeing things truthfully, seeing them? And think about that. Spend some time just really thinking about that and ask yourself a couple questions. You might even want to write down the answers as you think about it. The first question is, what are their needs and hopes and objectives? What are their dreams? What are their headaches? What do they want to accomplish? And as much as you can, identify what you already know about that. And then ask yourself, okay, given all that, what I know, how have I been making it harder for them? How have I been making it harder for them to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish? Or how have I been creating challenges for them? Is there anything that I need to take responsibility for? Is there any part of the ways that I've been making things harder that I actually could apologize for? And then ask yourself the third thing, given all that, is there anything that I could do differently? And identify that concretely, something that you could do that would be different than what you have been doing. Then take all of that, once you've really sat with that for a minute, and go and meet with that person. And sit down and say, hey, I've been thinking about you. And And as I've been thinking about you, I've been thinking about the kinds of things that matter to you and the kinds of things that you're trying to accomplish and achieve. And I know that there's been some friction between us. And as I've been thinking about you, I've realized that I haven't paid enough attention to the kinds of things you're trying to accomplish. So as I've been thinking about that, this is what I felt that I know right now about what your needs and challenges and hopes and headaches are. And just outline those and say, is that true? Is there something I've missed? Did I get that right? What would you add to that? And then listen. And then once they've shared, and they might say, that's exactly right. They might say, well, that and more. Or they might say, no, it's something other than that. And you'll learn. Whatever they say, you'll learn. And then say, well, look, I need to take responsibility because given all that, I've been getting in your way in this way, or I've made it harder for you in this way. And I need to own that. I'm sorry. And then say, is there anything else, any other ways that I've made it harder for you, that I've been a challenge for you? And then listen and learn. And then finally say, well, given all that, here's what I've thought I could do that might be more helpful than what I've been doing. Would that be helpful? Or is there something else? Or is there additional things I could do? And then just listen and learn. Here's the thing. So often when we experience friction and then we're at a place where we think, I want it to be better. We think, well, I'll just go to that person and say, hey, tell me how I've been a problem for you and how I could be different. If you do that, don't expect anything. Don't expect them to share anything. Of course they wouldn't. They don't have any evidence in their experience with you that you want to know, given the way you've been. So you have to demonstrate. But when you go and have demonstrated that you've been doing some work thinking about them and you offer something, you just what we call meat to give, then they can correct that and adjust that and give you more information. I'd say if you have the guts to do that, what we just outlined, the things that you will learn, the way that just that conversation can transform a relationship in your life will shock you. And look, there's no guarantee that, and to the degree that there's been a lot of friction, people might resist. To the degree that you've been in the middle of a collusion, people might go, whoa, what's Mitch up to, right? It might take some time. You might have to prove over time that you actually are interested in knowing what the answer is. You might have to start doing the things that you identified that you could do to change before you get, any chance for a conversation. But if you're committed to the process, the things that you will learn and the ways that it can transform your relationship are just remarkable.
Mitch, what would you like our listeners to do differently on Monday morning?
What I would love is probably the same thing that the people that work around me would love from me on Monday morning, is just to get really curious, to just start getting curious. So often we've got our job, or we've got our family or whatever the case is. And we think, well, I know what to do. I know everything I need to know. I mean, how long have I worked here? How long have I done this, right? I know what I need to do. And I say so head down in my lane, forgetting that there's nothing that I do in any role that I have in an organization that is not designed or intended to help someone else be more successful. And yet, I don't go find out what it is they're trying to achieve. I would say just go get curious. Go sit down with the person that you impact in your role and say, hey, how does someone in my role affect you and your ability to do your work, either positively or negatively? And what could I do to be more helpful? Just get really, really curious. And then you'll find yourself discovering ways that you could adjust your work to be more helpful that you just never would have seen before. So I'd say Monday morning, get really, really curious about the people you impact.
Mitch, thank you so much. Last question. As you reflect back on everything we've just discussed, what do you want our listeners to take away from this discussion, building on what you have said about Monday morning?
I think it's just that every person that we interact with is a person with an inner life and a reality and needs and challenges and objectives and hopes and struggles and hidden issues that are as real as ours are. sometimes, sometimes, Chris, that reality kind of washes over me. It's not often, because it's hard to hold that idea that every single person around me is a person that's as real as me. But to the degree that we can just be alive to that, we can remember that, then all of these masks that you talked about at the very beginning that we so often wear that get in the way of just being with other people, these self-justifying images, these collusions, these conflicts, all of those start to melt away when we just recognize that, man, everybody that I'm with is a person. And as a person, they are as important as I am. And what would I want if I was a person? How would I want to be seen? Just keep asking yourself that question. What is life like for other people who are as real as I am, having to live and work with someone like me? And whatever the sense is that you have, don't betray it. Go and do it.
We have time for one more question. So I wanted to ask you, what were maybe 2-3 aha moments, realizations of the last few years, or even the last 10, 20 years that really changed the way you look at life or the way you look at business?
When I graduated from high school, I had an opportunity to go work in a nursing home in California. I was 18 years old, and it was my first kind of real job. I was working in the business office, and this nursing home had been recently acquired by a new management company. And there were 78 patients in this nursing home, and the administrator said, "Hey, Mitch, in addition to what you're doing in the business office that, was collecting on insurance payments and things like that," he said, "I'd like you to interact with every patient in this facility every day." I thought, okay, I can do that. I actually didn't like that idea because I actually didn't like elderly people. And this was a facility that was designed to help elderly people, sometimes in the latest stages of their life. But I did it because I thought, well, this is my job. I gotta go interact with every patient. And so I did that. And every day I went and I just had an interaction with every patient. And I remember the very first day I went into this room and I saw the placard on the door, and the patient's name was Linda. And I walk into this room and here's this woman, and she's laying back in this hospital bed. And I introduced myself. I said, "Hi, Linda, my name's Mitch. I'm first day on the job. Is there anything I can do for you?" And she doesn't say anything. She just looks at me and she doesn't move. And I can tell, because the sheet is pulled up so tightly over her, I can tell that the shape of her feet are severely contracted underneath the sheet. And then her arms were over the top of the sheet and they were severely contracted. And she doesn't respond. She just looks at me and she kind of looks bugged, kind of annoyed. And so I thought, well, maybe she didn't hear me. So I come closer to the bed and I said, "Hey, Linda, my name's Mitch. How are you?" And she doesn't say anything. And I don't know if you've ever had a fully one-sided conversation, but you can only say so many things. And then you say, "Well, I'll see you tomorrow, Linda." And I turn to leave. And every day I did what I thought was my job. I went into this room. I tried to interact with Linda. She never said a word to me, but I did this every single day. And then I remember after a couple weeks, the same one-sided interaction. I'm talking at Linda. She doesn't say anything, just looks at me. And I turn to leave. And as I turn to leave, I see this rolled up kind of poster looking thing on the floor behind the door that goes out into the hallway. And it looks like it's fallen out of the patient's closet, out of Linda's closet. So I go and I pick this up and I take it out in the hall and I'm taking it down to the dumpster at the back of the building. And this nurse stops me and said, "Hey, where are you going with that?" I said, "Oh, well, I found this on Linda's floor. It's just a piece of trash. I'm taking it to the dumpster." And she said, "Well, do you know what that is?" And I hadn't looked at this. So I open it up and it's this poster. And it's kind of gross and dirty and kind of torn up, but it's got all of these pictures in black and white, these little diagram kind of things. One is a tray of food, and one is a glass of water, and one is a telephone, and one is the toilet, and things like that. And the nurse says, "Mitch, that's a communication board. Linda, she can't speak." And I didn't know that. So here I am every day doing what I thought was my job, but I had never seen this human being that was lying in that hospital bed as a human being. She was not a person to me. She was just part of the scenery of my life. You know, she was part of the way I did my job. But here's the truth. Because I never saw Linda, even though I was doing the thing that I had been asked to do, I had never done my job. And to the degree that we don't see the people in our lives as people, at work or at home or in any area of our life, we will never actually do our job, whether that's being a father or whether that's being a manager. It doesn't matter. But when I started seeing in that moment Linda as a person for the very first time, I wanted to know more. That feeling of curiosity we've been talking about, all of a sudden I didn't have to try to be curious. I just was curious. I thought, who is this person? What's life like for her? Laying in that bed, not being able to move or speak. And we went to the medical record and I learned about her. I learned about her history and how after she had gotten married, she went into the hospital for a very routine procedure that had left her with an infection and without the ability to move or speak. And when I started thinking about that with this nurse, I thought, well, why do we have a poster inside the patient's closet if she can't move? And this is her only way to communicate. So we went to the supply closet and we found this box about the size of a shoebox, and we printed out all of those different pictures and a few more that we thought of. And then on one side of the box, we printed out the keyboard of like a computer with all the letters of the alphabet and the numbers. And we got this wood dowel rod and we put it through the box so that we could affix that between her hands and she could hold this box on her chest sitting up in bed. And we got some dental wax and we put a pencil in her mouth and she could point to the different letters of the alphabet and I could write down the letters and form the words that she was saying. And for the first time, she could talk. That was my job. So that for me, I would say, Chris, was maybe professionally, but also personally, one of the most important experiences of my life. Because in that moment, all of the masks that I was wearing, all of the self-concern or self-doubt that I had, all of the frustration of having to do this job, it just melted. I realized I'm a person with other people. And if I can see other people, my life becomes so much more full and rich. And now I can actually do my job. My job isn't to go visit these patients. And I'd say if you're listening to this podcast, you ask yourself, what is my job? Yeah, okay, but who do I do any of that for? And if I can get curious about them and what life is really like for them, what might that unlock? That will change your life. I promise you. It will change everything.
Mitch, thank you so much for sharing this story. I think this is a key story that really will stay with people. And I think it will change many lives because just such a good reminder that we are all people. And whenever we feel less than or more than someone else, this is just noise and it's not leading to any good outcomes for anybody.
Yeah, well said.
Mitch, thank you so much. Where can our listeners learn more about you, buy your book, anything you want to share?
Well, we'd love if you came and visited us at the website. It's arbinger.com, ARBINGER.com. Just come and learn about the resources that we have for you as you try to think about how do I get rid of self-deception in my organization? How do we become more engaged and collaborative? We'd love to help you build a culture that's blame-free, that where people actually see each other's people as a function of their work. So come and visit us there. We can set up a conversation and just explore what this could look like in your organization and how you can make that happen. Or if you want to explore these ideas in more detail, reading our books, Leadership and Self-Deception, the newest 4th edition just came out last month. We'd love for you to buy that, or The Outward Mindset. Both of them can be purchased on Amazon or wherever you get your books. We'd love for you to read that and let's have a conversation.
Mitch, thank you again so much for being part of this. Really appreciate you being here and sharing everything that you have shared.
Thank you, Chris. It's been an absolute pleasure. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Our guest today again has been Mitch Warner. check out his book, Leadership and Self-Deception. And our podcast sponsor today is strategytraining.com. If you want to strengthen your strategy skills, you can get the overall approach used in well-managed strategy studies. It's a free download we created for you as a gift, and you can get it at firmsconsulting.com/overall approach. And you can also get McKinsey and BCG winning resume, which is a resume that led to offers from both firms. And you can get it at firmsconsulting.com/resume PDF. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and I look forward to connect with you all next time.